As we all know, a lot of cards from the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG originates from its anime. However, sometimes they power up these cards from their original appearances to make them more playable, or sometimes really just to make them stronger. So here are my top 10 cards that are stronger than in the anime. Starting off at number 10, we have Gold Sarcophagus. Gold Sarcophagus is a pretty important spell card in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga. Yugi's puzzle was contained in this box with the Eye of Anubis, which is pretty much the same box that appears on the card art of Gold Sarcophagus. The effect in the manga and anime was that you could put one card from your deck in the box by banishing it face down, and if the opponent uses the same card, you reveal it and negate your opponent's card. This effect was used by Yugi in his final duel against the Pharaoh to negate the activation of Monster Reborn, which was used by the Pharaoh to revive Slifer the Sky Dragon. Side note, while making this video, they've released a new card named Gold Sarcophagus of Light. It has multiple effects, such as protection from monster effects and searching for a card that mentions it, but the last effect is a direct reference to the iconic Monin. The effect is, if your opponent special summons a monster from the graveyard, you can discard one spell card and target it to send it to the graveyard, which I think is a very neat reference. The anime effect of this card is actually pretty limited, since you'd have to be playing the same cards as your opponent and predict which one he's gonna use. It's like a slower and weaker version of the card Cross-Out Designator, a quick play spell card that can negate a card your opponent uses by declaring the name of a card and banishing the same one from your deck. In the TCG, however, its effect is very powerful. It's a generic searcher for any card in your deck by banishing it for 2 standby phases. This effect is so good, or was so good, that it got limited for a long time. That being said, it is pretty slow for today's standard. Nowadays, waiting 2 turns to get a card from your deck to your hand isn't considered optimal, so you could argue that this card could get unlimited and see no play. At number 9, we have Honest. Honest is a level 4 light fairy monster with 1100 attack and 1900 defense. It used to be a pretty popular card to use because its effect was so useful and could win you the game around the time of its release. Honest's effect used to be relevant when effects in the battle phase were more prominent. It allowed him to discard itself to make one of your light monsters gain the attack of your opponent's monster during the damage step. Furthermore, you could return it to your hand if it was on the field. This effect was pretty useful since with 1900 defense, Honest could be used as a wall monster, then returned to the hand to use its battle trick effect. It's not as used nowadays because of power creep, and battle tricks are honestly too slow for today's metagame, but it could honestly, pun intended, go in the Hall of Fame of cards that impacted the game's history. Now, the anime effect is very similar, but a bit more restrictive. It still has the first effect of being able to return to the hand, so that's a direct translation from the anime to the TCG. It's the battle trick effect that actually got changed. You could only use it on a level 7 or higher warrior monster. The reason behind this effect is probably because Jaden used Honest during his duel against Truman. During this duel, he had to discard Honest to boost Neos' attack. And since Neos is a level 7 warrior light monster, in the TCG they probably just kept the light aspect of Neos and removed the level and type restriction. So in the end, they just made Honest a pretty decent generic light support card. At number 8, we have Fossil Dina Pachycephalo. Fossil Dina Pachycephalo is a level 4 Earth Rock type monster with 1200 attack and 1300 defense. This card is used by Jim Crocodile Cook when he duels Jaden while he's being controlled by the spirit of the Supreme King. Honestly, one of my favorite duels in the series. In the anime, it has such an underwhelming battle effect. The anime effect goes as follows. After the damage step, if it destroys a monster by battle, it changes its position to defense mode, and then gains the defense of the destroyed monster. This effect is kinda just one of those awful kinds of effect you'd expect from pack filler in the GX era. However, for some unknown reason, it had a real boost in effect when they printed the card in the Light of Destruction booster pack. I said a boost in effect, but I guess I should say a complete change of effect, because this card became a floodgate card, a type of card that restricts your opponent from doing any type of action. So this card's real life effect is that if it's flipped face up, it destroys all special summon monster on the field. And the floodgate effect it got was that it prevented both players from special summoning monsters. I say both players, but to be honest, if you're using this card, you're trying to prevent your opponent from doing anything. Granted, during the GX era, this effect probably wasn't as useful as it is now, but needless to say, its TCG effect is so much better for the modern metagame since special summoning became so rampant. At number 7, it's Kimitech Fortress Dragon. Kimitech Fortress Dragon is a level 8 Dark Machine monster with 0 attack and 0 defense. This card was used by Zane, or Ryo in the original Japanese dub, against his duel with Yubel who possessed Johan, or Jesse. This card in the TCG is pretty neat, and can be used as a tech option depending on the meta. Its effect allows it to summon itself using monsters from either side of the field as long as it meets the requirement, 1 Cyber Giant and 1 or more machine monsters. It then gains 1000 attack times the number of materials used. Using your opponent's monster as materials has to be one of the best forms of removal since it dodges a lot of destruction or targeting effects. In the anime though, its effect is pretty mediocre compared to the TCG. This card didn't have any special summoning requirements. It was a pretty standard fusion summoning, so you had to use a fusion card to bring it out. Just like the TCG though, it needed 1 Cyber Dragon and 1 or more machine type monster. When this card was fusion summoned, you had to send all other cards you control to the graveyard. But it didn't gain any attack for the number of materials used, so it had 0 attack on the field. It had a pretty odd effect because its own effect negated his own attack, and then it proceeded to give some burn damage. You could attack up to the number of materials used for its fusion summoning. So, in the duel between Zane and Jesse, Zane used around 5 materials to attack 5 times, and every time he attacked, its own attack is negated and proceeded to give 400 points of burn damage. Probably one of my favorite scenes in the anime. That being said, they really buffed this card with the way we can bring it out. If your opponent uses machine type monsters and you have a Cyber Dragon on the field, you can pretty much use 5 monsters he controls to bring this out, as long as they are machine type monsters, but there are ways to modify that aspect. At number 6, Red Eye's Darkness Metal Dragon is a level 10 Dark Dragon monster with 2800 attack and 2400 defense. It's obviously a mix of Red Eye's Metal Dragon and Red Eye's Darkness Dragon, which I think is a pretty neat evolution. This card is used by Atticus Rhodes, or Fubuki Tenjoin in Japanese, in the Season 4 of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, where he challenged Jaden using the Darkness power. This Red Eyes card received a major buff compared to its anime effect. In the anime, it gained 400 attack for each dragon in the graveyard, kinda like its predecessor, Red Eye's Darkness Dragon, who gained 300 attack. It also had the ability to negate spell cards by discarding 1 card from your hand. The effect in the anime kinda follows the same pattern of buffing the Red Eyes, but the real life effect is one of those cases where they completely changed the monster's effect. The change made the card a very powerful card in dragon type focused decks, because if you banish 1 dragon monster on the field, you could easily special summon it from your hand. Furthermore, you could special summon a dragon type monster from your hand or graveyard for free. The fact that it was a dark monster made it a popular card to put into Chaos Dragon decks, which focuses on light and dark dragon monsters and banishing them. In any case, this card was so powerful that they had to limit it. So for some time you can only play 1 copy in your deck, until they errata it and put it back to unlimited. The errata made it so that you can only special summon Red Eye's Darkness Metal Dragon once per turn by its own effect. At number 5 we have Speedroid Terop. Speedroid Terop is a level 3 wind machine monster card used by Yu-Gi-Oh! In Arc 5. The Speedroids are a bunch of toy-like wind machine type monsters that focuses on synchro summoning. In the TCG, Terop was a very useful card. It could special summon itself from your hand if you control no monster. Then it could add any Speedroid monster from your deck to your hand. Usually, this was played with Speedroid Taketomborg to make a rank 3 Xyz monster, since Taketomborg could special summon itself, although they originally probably were made to make synchro monsters with Taketomborg's effect to summon a Speedroid tuner monster from the deck. They thankfully really buffed this monster because the original effect was that it could only be special summoned when you control no monster. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the effect. Well, it had a restriction of not being able to be normal summoned. They really transformed a mediocre effect to a rank 3 engine card. The card is actually so good now that it's still limited till this day. It is a pretty funny thought that this card is limited because of its ability of easily making an Xyz monster when Yu-Gi-Oh! From the Arc 5 anime is from the Synchro dimension. Next up, we have Foolish Burial at number 4. Foolish Burial is an iconic spell card. Its effect is very simple and becomes more and more powerful with each passing year. It allows you to send 1 monster from your deck and send it to the graveyard. Since Yu-Gi-Oh! Became so graveyard-centric, it quickly got its place on the ban list and is currently limited to 1 and will probably never leave that place. You might be surprised to find out that this iconic spell card was first used in the anime by none other than Joey Wheeler, our favorite underdog. It was first used in his duel with Odeon, and Foolish Burial had a small change that makes all the difference. In the anime, Foolish Burial sends a card from your deck to the graveyard, but not your graveyard, it goes to your opponent's graveyard. The way Joey used it was to send Jinzo to Odeon's graveyard to then activate Grave Robber, and since Grave Robber in the anime could just take any card from your opponent's graveyard, as the name implies, Joey was able to special summon Jinzo to his field. This is honestly such an anime moment, cause I don't think Foolish Burial would see any play if it kept its anime effect, since you're essentially giving your opponent a piece of your strategy. Thankfully, by changing the card's effect with how it is in the TCG, it's one of the strongest spell cards in the game's history. My pick for number 3 is Perform Mage Plushfire. Perform Mage Plushfire is a level 4 fire spellcaster type pendulum monster used by Dennis McPhail, an entertainment duelist in the Arc 5 anime. Some of his cards are well known because of the Tier 0 deck Pepe, including Plushfire. This card actually received a small change in real life that made it so powerful that the card is still banned till this day. In the TCG, its most powerful effect was the fact that if it was destroyed, it could special summon another Perform Mage monster from your hand or from your deck, except itself. You may have noticed any lack of restriction on this effect. This card has no once per turn, so you can use it multiple times with the same card or another copy of it. It's kinda surprising that there was no once per turn, since Infinities were already something that show what no restrictions on effects can do. In any case, that effect got him on the ban list since it generates way too much advantage and it's not counting its pendulum effect. When it was in the pendulum zone, if a Perform Mage monster you control was destroyed by battle or card effect, you could special summon the card from your pendulum zone, then take 500 damage. This effect is once per turn though. For some reason, the effect of Plushfire got a restriction on the pendulum zone but not on the monster zone. That's kinda weird in my opinion. In any case, in the anime you could argue that it was weaker, although the effect also didn't have any restrictions. So in the anime, when Plushfire was destroyed, it could special summon another Perform Mage monster only from your hand. And when it's in the pendulum zone, if a monster you control was destroyed, it could special summon itself. You took no damage. Both of these effects were not once per turn. The change that really made all the difference was the special summoning from the deck. I can guarantee that if it kept its anime effect, it would have stayed unlimited. At number 2, we have Dandelion. Dandelion is a level 3 plant monster with 300 attack and 300 defense. And he was one of the cards created by Jaden for a contest held by Kyber Court, in which he won. Thus, alongside the Neospatians, Dandelion was created. This card's anime effect was as follows. When this card is destroyed by battle, special summon 2 fluff token with 0 attack and defense in defense position. Now this effect at first glance may just seem to be the same as the one in the real life card game, since both cards can summon tokens. However, as many may have noticed, the condition in how the effect is activated is what makes all the difference. Dandelion's real life condition is that it only needed to be sent to the graveyard instead of being destroyed by battle. This means you can send it from the deck, from your hand, or your field to the graveyard by whatever means, and still be able to summon tokens. They accidentally transform its mediocre anime effect to an overpowered one. The original intent of Dandelion was to summon tokens on your side of the field to summon high-level monsters on your next turn, as seen on Yu-Gi-Oh! GX with Jaden using the tokens to summon elemental hero Neos. They kinda nerfed that aspect of Dandelion by making it so your tokens cannot be tributed the same turn they were summoned. But with the evolution of the game, that restriction did not matter at all. Dandelion became a broken card because of its ability to summon 2 tokens just by sending it to the graveyard. This would eventually enable Synchro and Link plays, which inevitably got him on the ban list. The cherry on top is that that effect is not even once per turn, so with the right strategy, you could loop this card and create more and more tokens. And for my number 1 pick, it is Dark Strike Fighter. Dark Strike Fighter is a level 7 Dark Machine Synchro monster that terrorized the metagame for some time during the 5Ds era. The reason behind this is because its effect enabled a lot of FTKs because of its lack of once per turn and the fact that its effect could be used on itself. So, what was this powerful effect? Dark Strike Fighter is a card that could tribute a monster and inflict 200 times the level of the tributed monster. The usual FTK involves summoning big monsters, attacking, and using Darkstrike Fighter's effect in main phase 2. A player would have high level monsters on his side of the field and would tribute every one of them, including Darkstrike Fighter, to win the game. This effect eventually got the card banned. Then they proceeded to errata the card to limit it to the main phase 1 and only being able to use the effect once per turn and only once that turn. Now let's talk about the anime version. This card was used by the character Bomber in the 5Ds anime. In the anime though, it actually has way more restriction on its effect. It couldn't tribute itself and could only be used once per turn. It couldn't even attack the turn it used its effect. I think it's kinda funny that they remove a bunch of restrictions on this card just to errata it, since it was too broken. But if they just printed the card just like the anime, then there wouldn't have been any problem at all. This is one of the few instances where printing the anime card would have been way better for the game, since it was already pretty balanced. It kinda just shows how sometimes just printing the anime effect is actually much better. So these were my top 10 cards that were stronger in the TCG than their anime appearances. Obviously I probably missed a few, so feel free to comment down below what other cards are better in the TCG than in the anime. So thank you for watching and see you next time.